Hey, it's New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center located in Fresno, California. Fresno, the heart of the Central Valley. The Central Valley, the heart of the state of California. As I say each week, we got a lot of heart going on here. And I hope as you created this day when you were just beginning to come into consciousness this morning, before you opened your eyes, that you made a declaration of gratitude for the gift that was given you. You made a declaration of the guidance that was going to be provided for you by the divine principle providing through you, that you gave direction to your day as the gift that it is given to you by the infiniteness of all that is, that which we call first God, first cause, God, principle, source, and many other things. Welcome to the show. So, last week I started off with what originally was just kind of a concept, and then I decided to do kind of a full study through the book that was written by Ernest Holmes, published in 1949 or 44, called Pray and Prosper. When Dr. Holmes wrote this book, by this time, New Thought, science of mind, religious science was a growing concern, if you will, in the world. Exciting things were happening. People were learning about this concept of an infinite, ever-present, available divine principle that when they spoke their word, when they lived a life that was focused in principle, focused on principle, and dependent on principle, expressing in their life with the knowledge of themselves, knowing the truth of who they were and are, that they had every intention and expectation to see God's plan unfold in their life. Now, it's true that life does come at us at the speed of life. No doubt about it. I spent time with some people this last week that we're talking about the various issues that unfold in their life. But you know, the thing is that one of the things that I learned from reading from Christian Larson was that no matter what life brings at us, no matter what it is, that we can always find the good there if we take the time to seek the good in whatever it is. And that can be kind of a massive, overwhelming concept until you begin to make it an ongoing daily spiritual practice. It's important that you begin to do this throughout your day, all day, pretty much 24/7. And as you do, as you begin to seek to see the good in all that life brings at us, you will see the good in all that life brings at us. Dr. Thomas Trord said that nature becomes to us what we first become to it. And that's true. How we focus our minds, how we grow our belief, how we live in faith, and how we seek to see the absolute, that which we call God, and not rely on that which we call the relative or the physical expression we call materiality. We can get caught up in seeing causes and conditions and effects as being the causes of things that we experience, not realizing that there is a greater cause behind whatever it is that life brings at us, and that as life brings these things to us, that we always have a bigger God that is ever present, ever available at the level of our belief, faith, and understanding. So, pray and prosper. We left off last week. I didn't know how far I would get, and I've decided I'm not going to put any kind of endpoint on this. When we get to the end of the book, that's when I'll be at the end point. What I read last week, where I left off, I'm going to kind of go back a little bit. This paragraph where Holmes says, hate, disunion, fear, and uncertainty may knock at the door of reality with a capital R. He says, but only peace can enter. That's a concept that oftentimes we can we can question when we get caught up in the materiality of life. Science and just life in general kind of tends to tell us that what we see in the material world is what the world is, and that's not true. And as we begin to open ourselves up to an understanding that that isn't true, and then seek to see what the truth is and to apply that truth in our life, everything takes a whole, it's like a whole shift in the universe, if you will, in our universe, in our life. But we have to go into this secret place, the Most High, and that's to be found within ourselves. Holmes says in here, he says, "Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. Peace is at the very center of our being." Peace is at the very center of our being. We look out in the world, we see chaos. We want to allow chaos to take over our day-to-day life experience because we see it out in the world. But we can say no to that chaos. We can say no to what we see in the world. And again, it starts with aligning ourselves with principle. And one of the things we have to do is we have to let hate, disunion, fear, uncertainty, prejudice, and everything else that forms a wedge between us and the divine principle. We have to let it go. We have to realize that our tribe is not as important as God is in our life. We have to realize that how we self-identify as our personality, as our ego is telling us how we need to self-identify, is not as important as understanding the truth of who we are and the truth of how divine principle unfolds in our life, and our life unfolds within the divine principle. So, but we got to know that. We got to put it into practice. We get caught up because the material world tells us that we've got to be caught up. We've got to let that go. He says, "There is a law of mind which follows a pattern of our thought." And herein is where we really begin to get into the kind of the meat of this thing. There is a law of mind which follows our trend of thought. And if our trend of thought is tied to the chaos because we live in a degree of ignorance, if our trend of thought is tied up there, then that's where we're going to go in our life experience. We're going to be tied up in this chaos. We're going to be living this chaos. And, chaos can be a really unhappy place to be. There's a lot of doubt, anxiety. Living in chaos, living in doubt, living in anxiety opens us up to a lot of negativity within our own trend of thought. And through that negativity and this thing called race consciousness, of which we spoke of a couple weeks ago, we open ourselves up for, a whole bunch of things that we call dis-ease. And dis-ease is not a good thing. We bring it upon ourselves. But as we bring this upon ourselves, we can also eliminate this from our consciousness, eliminate this from our mind, eliminate this from our experience. And this is where it becomes important. Now I'm gonna move ahead here where I ended up last week, and this thing where Holmes talks about spiritual communion is deeper than intellectual perception. When people begin to embody the teachings, the spiritual teachings and tools of New Thought, of religious science and spirit, they can get kind of excited about it. But if they keep it as just an intellectual pursuit, they're not going to get the good that's there. And I use get in both the get as in, yeah, I get that, or get as in acquiring it. Either way, they're going to be on the outside looking in. And that's not a place where we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be on the inside within, looking out into a world that is a result of our relationship, our known relationship, our embodied relationship with that which we call God, Spirit, First Cause, or Principle. And so we've talked about this on previous shows, having experienced a spiritual communion, a spiritual connection that is available to each and every one of us. And at the level we do that, at the level we seek that, things begin to happen and unfold in our lives. Which brings me up to where we're really going to start today, and that is man's mind is likened to the workings of God, for it is here that the tools of thought consciously may fashion destiny, may carve out a new future. We have been told to do this according to the pattern shown to us in the Mount, on the Mount. This means that we are to formulate our ideas on the proposition that there is an all-sustaining power. There is an all-sustaining power that is infinite, that is infinitely available to each and every one of us. None of us, not a single breathing being on the face of the earth, is separate from that principle. It's there, okay? But we have to know it, okay? And when we know that, he says, this means we must formulate our ideas to the proposition that there is an all-sustaining power and an all-pervading presence around us, an immutable law ever serving us when our lives are in harmony with the divine nature. And I've talked about this over and over again. And Holmes reaffirms it again here, that we have to align ourselves with harmony. We have to align ourselves with the divine nature. So often people, they get excited, boy, I'm going to be the creator in my life experience, and when they work on stuff and then things don't work and they don't understand why, and some of that has to do with this thing called race consciousness, but some of this has to do with what we can call mental laziness, if you will, how we get caught up in our own mind in the old habit patterns of thinking. And our old habit patterns of thinking are those patterns that know that we are separate from our source, from our truth. They know that either through, again, hate, anger, discord, doubt, and all these other things that we've talked about. We have to shuttle that aside. We have to reaffirm, we have to create new habit patterns of thinking in our mind, and we have to be vigilant about what we allow to what goes between the left ear and the right ear on an ongoing basis, that squirrel cage, if you will, in the back of the mind, that ticker tape of ongoing thought. We've talked about that there are some people that say that we think somewhere between 30 to 60 or 80,000 thoughts a day. I mean, that's an incredible amount of thoughts that I'm not sure I'm aware of that goes on in my own mind, but obviously it does, because there's people that have taken the time to do research on this, and those are the figures they've come up with. Well, if there's that much going on between the right side and the left side of my head, if you will, in that squirrel cage, then maybe I should kind of be the director of where that is, because thoughts, we talk about thoughts are things. Thoughts have power. Thoughts have creative power. Thoughts have the ability to be very important in our day-to-day, moment-to-moment life experience. We'll take our first break, and I'll see you when we come back.
With Organic Pastures Raw Milk, you're getting a product that has been meticulously managed from grass to glass. From our pastures to our dairy, creamery, and distribution, we work hard to produce a product that is safe and clean for you.
Got lactose intolerance or dairy allergies? Discover delicious raw milk and discover dairy the way it's supposed to be. We provide tours and would love to see you. Come visit the cows, watch the milking, the cheese being made, and learn all about raw milk. We're just 20 miles south and west of Fresno, California. Call to schedule a tour at 559-846-9732.
The Saga of Bridget and Amanda by Carol Love Forbes brings to life the struggles of historical women in early America. Find the Saga of Bridget and Amanda on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and order your copy today.
Hi, I'm the host of New Thought Talk, Reverend Steve Walling, and I want to take a moment today and give you an opportunity to support our ministry, support our show. You can do that through a PayPal payment. You send the payment through PayPal to the email address of Madera, MADERASAC @gmail.com. If you don't have a PayPal account, you can go down below the link and you can find where you can enter a debit or credit card. I want to thank those that have supported us and those that will continue to support us. You have a great day. Bye.
You enter this door with expired tags. Beyond is another dimension, a dimension of regulations, a dimension of long waits. You have reached the registration zone. What looks like an ordinary shop is actually Mitchell Smog, located in the heart of the Tower District, a few minutes from the DMV. Mitchell Smog offers your vehicle a STAR-certified smog inspection. So remember Mitchell Smog when you need to pass through the registration zone.
Christy Majors is your local real estate connection. With a solid, hard-working team, traditional listings, short sales, probate listings, and foreclosures are treated in a personal and caring way and closed in a timely fashion. Since 2009, Team Majors has closed more than $75 million worth of homes all over California. Reliable and trustworthy, Christy and her team will go the extra mile for every client, whether selling or buying a home. So give Team Majors a call at 559-464-5606 or visit teammajors.com.
After a tough day at the track, cleaning up can be a time-consuming task. That's why we use Extreme Cleaner, the non-toxic, biodegradable, multi-purpose cleaner and degreaser. Extreme Cleaner cuts through even the toughest of grease and grime. Fast. Great for cleaning tools and work surfaces. Extreme Cleaner. Tough on grime, safe on the environment. Visit extremecleaner.com to find a retailer near you.
When you experience flooding in your home, you need to call Clean Master Emergency Flood Service at 559-213-9430. After soaking in water for only 45 minutes, carpet starts to come apart. Clean Master Emergency Flood Service can help, and not just with carpet repair. They also offer carpet cleaning, upholstery cleaning, carpet installation, and more. Call Clean Master Emergency Flood Service, and they'll be there in 60 minutes. Call 559-213-9430.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Hey, welcome back to New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling. Welcome back to the show. We're continuing our endeavor to go through the book Pray and Prosper by Dr. Ernest Holmes. And so when we went to the break, I was talking about this idea that Holmes says here. He says that the immutable law is ever serving us when our lives are in harmony with divine nature. In other words, we align ourselves. And I think I covered that pretty good. So he says, through an exact law, demonstration follows the word of faith. The word of faith. Now, you know, faith is one of those things that oftentimes we can get a little distracted with, if you will. Faith is a very important part of our spiritual process, our spiritual journey, and it oftentimes gets kind of confused with belief, and although it's very intimately associated with belief, it's not exactly the same. You know, our beliefs are those things that we have decided, either consciously or unconsciously, subjectively, to be true. And those beliefs, once they have established themselves, become kind of a habitual way of thinking about whatever it is. Now, faith, if you will, is kind of the power that we put into the beliefs that we hold. It's kind of like feeling is the power that goes into the word we speak when we begin to speak our word as we're doing our affirmative prayer work. We can create the image in the imagination, but if the image stays as an intellectual work within our consciousness, it doesn't have a whole lot of power. But when we put feeling into that, emotion into that, we give life to it, if you will. And feeling is extremely intimately associated with life. Well, faith is kind of the feeling part of prayer, of belief. And so as we bring faith to our beliefs, the greater the faith, the stronger our beliefs. And the stronger our beliefs, the higher level that we can build even more and greater faith. And that's why when we talk about our spiritual journey, it's not just a decision to all of a sudden believe in a certain way and then see life unfold in that way. Now, truth be told, there are probably some of us that have that capability. But most of us, it's a journey. It's a work in progress. And so one of the things that when I'm working with people that I talk to them about is this idea of, and you can write this down if you'd like. It's a little tool that works, and it goes: we pray, we meditate, and we study to build our faith and belief by constantly and continuously challenging ourselves for change. Constantly, continuously challenging ourselves for change in our life, obviously for a better life. Challenge yourself. If you're living a life of so-so-ness today, challenge yourself to live a life of above so-so-ness. And we've talked also about how when we begin to move out of our comfort zone, old limiting beliefs that we've held, oftentimes beliefs that we're not aware of, will tend to kind of sabotage us to bring us back into our comfort zone. We challenge ourselves to move beyond that, to seek to overcome, to seek to strive, to express more livingness in our life, knowing that as we seek to express more livingness in our life, as we align ourselves with principle, as we speak our word, that there is a law of cause and effect that responds as we do this, and so we can begin to put that law into practice in a conscious way instead of being subject to that law unconsciously, as a lot of us have been in the past. He says, as we do this, he says we have to know, he says it's written that I will be to them as they have spoken. And again he writes, be firm and ye shall be made firm. Act as though I am and I will be. And these are all quotes from the master teacher. We have to do this. We have to know this. And he says we must continue in faith until our whole mental life, both conscious and subjective, responds. It's often easy to get it on the conscious side of our life. Intellectually, we can say, I want to experience a greater life. I want to experience more abundance. I want to experience more health. I want to experience more love. I want to experience more good. That's kind of a no-brainer for most of us, but on the subconscious, subjective side of our life, we may hold limiting beliefs there that we're not even aware of. And it's time to kick those beliefs, if you will. And I say kick it, it's almost like kicking an addiction. And in a sense, limiting beliefs have been our addiction to what we see out through our five senses and define as the real world. That real, so-called real world, as we interpret it through our five senses, is not really real. But we've accepted it as so, because people have told us, race consciousness have told us, but all of a sudden we maybe somehow have come into contact with a realization, somebody that, you notice their life is incredibly positive, and you speak to them and maybe they tell you about this thing called New Thought in any of its various forms. Maybe they just tell you that they feel more spiritually connected to the source, to God, however they define that spiritual connection. And the funny thing is that when people tell us about good that they experience in their lives, that we can conceive that maybe we can also partake of that, we begin to get interested. And as long as we keep our interest up, and that's our choice, is to keep our interest up, as long as we continue to seek to bring ourselves into greater harmony, greater alignment with divine principle, that which we call God, we're going to continue to see that unfold in our life. Now, sometimes there may be a little pushback from our belief. Know that we have a bigger God. Remember that with God, all things are possible. So he says, here as we move forward, he says, if we would pray and prosper, we must believe that Spirit is both willing and able to make this gift. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to someone and they like the idea. They kind of get it that with God all things are possible, but they can't buy into the belief that God's Spirit is not only able to do that, but is willing to do that, that we as individuals are worthy that God would take note of us, that Spirit takes note of us. But when you begin to see the beauty of the truth of who we are, that we're not just some makeshift creation of the divine that God winds up and puts out into the world, but we're actually God stuff, if you will, God's substance that has been created in our image with the nature of God, that we are in the image and likeness of God, the nature of God, expressing as each and every one of us. We're an individualized aspect of God itself. And our purpose here, the reason why we live and breathe and exist within God, is to express at a greater and higher degree of livingness all that God has gifted us in potential to do, that it is God's nature to seek to express itself at ever higher levels of livingness. And as humanity and the rest of God's creation has evolved, we are the highest level of consciousness, if you will, and we are at the level that we're at so that we can do what we have the ability to do, but oftentimes not the understanding that we live at that level of ability in doing this. That's what the master teacher, when Jesus walked the face of the earth, that's what he was talking about. That's what he was trying to share. It was a radical concept back in the day, but for so many people, it's still a radical concept today. And yet, when we begin to embody it and we begin to utilize it in our lives, we begin to see the greater good that we can live in our life experience. Our inner light shines higher, greater, and we bring more good into the world. He says, one need not have great intellectual attainment to understand these simple things. Jesus said that the kingdom of heaven is reached through childlike faith. There's no great maze that we have to walk through. There's no SAT or ACT test, if you will, that will allow us or open the doors for us to get into the university of God. We're already there. That door is open. The gifts are there in potential, awaiting each and every one of us. He says, again, he said, and Holmes is referring to Jesus, he says, I thank thee, Father, because thou hast hid these things from the wise and the prudent, and has revealed them unto the babes. This goes back again to this understanding, setting aside all that stuff and having, when Jesus talks about a childlike belief, he's talking about being totally open. He's talking about having, you ever look at a baby and they begin to smile and giggle, and the purity of that is so amazing. It's hard not to be touched by it. And yet we didn't lose that after we got older. We just failed to revisit it on an ongoing basis. And yet it is there within each and every one of us. And as we begin to open ourselves up to the truth of who we are, we draw nearer to that. We draw nearer to the truth of who we are. And that inner beingness of an amazing childlike laughter, if you will, is waiting to well up inside of us as we move forward. He says, everything that Jesus said and did was said and done to provide an example for our benefit. He was the great example. He wasn't the great exception. I think I said I may have misstated. I got so carried away sharing it in last week's lesson as we were going through this that I may have said he was the great experiencer, but Jesus was the great expression. He is the great example. He's not the great exception. It's not him and us as being separate from. We're all part of that same family. We're all part of that same God expressing as each and every one of us. And that is an incredibly powerful belief when we begin to open up to it. So moving forward, he says here, this is Holmes I'm talking about, he says, all of his works, referring to Jesus, have been miscalled miracles, were to prove that his teachings were correct. All of his works, which have been miscalled miracles, were to prove that his teachings were correct. I talked a little bit about this last week. The supposed miracles that he did when he walked the face of the earth wasn't limited to him. You will find in the record, if you will, that also he sent his disciples out to do that. That there is notation that his apostles, after he made his transition, after he gave up his physical presence in this reality, they went out and did this. But it's only in later generations that people begin to look back and discount those other so-called miracles and said that really the only miracles were done by Jesus, and they were done because he exclusively was the great exception. But that's not what he taught. And so we got to get that. We got to open ourselves up, right? So moving forward, because I want to cover more of this. He says, he asked those around him whether it was easier to announce a philosophy or to prove it. And they had been arguing about his spiritual authority, and he asked them, quote, whether it is easier to say, thy sins be forgiven thee, or to say, arise and walk, and that they might know that the Son of Man has power on earth to forgive sins. He said this to the man with palsy, arise, take up thy bed, and go unto thine house. And he's laying this out. Jesus is laying this out in front of so-called skeptics and saying, is it really easier? You want to get so tied up on to what the conditions and effects of supposed reality are, you want to get down to what's important to get down to. He says, just as the teachings of Jesus announce the divine presence, so his works prove the presence of a law which received the impress of his word and brought it forth into form. And that same law is in effect today. It's what we call the great law, the law of cause and effect. It's available to each and every one of us. It's not only available, but it works through us on an ongoing basis, through our own ignorance most of the time, but it is a law that we can begin once we know that it's there, once we realize that we can access it, once we realize that we can utilize it at the level that we have faith and belief in it, we can have an intention and expectation to see that demonstrate in our life. And that's going to take us up to our next break, and I'll see you when we come back.
Ghost Golf is Fresno's most spooktacular family entertainment center. It's frightening how much fun you'll have on our 18-hole indoor haunted graveyard course. Skeletons welcome you, but watch out. All sorts of creatures may come to life. Ghost Golf is perfect for scary good parties, so book yours today. You'll get free plays at the Mummy Shooting Gallery, arcades, and air hockey. Check out our party and weekday specials online and like us on Facebook. Come play at family-friendly Ghost Golf. Good times will haunt you.
At McDermott Counseling, you will receive the highest level of care and a welcoming, safe space in which to discuss your most personal issues. Our therapists go above and beyond for you. Call 559-280-5756 or visit McDermottCounseling.com to find a caring therapist who best suits your needs.
Diane Ainsworth's books of poetry and scriptures are available at CondioPress.com and as ebooks at Amazon.com. Diane hopes the words in her books will convey the unconditional love Jesus has for you. Learn more at God'sInspirationsBlog.wordpress.com and get a copy of Diane's books today.
Hello everyone, my name is Miss G. I offer fun and affordable promotion and advertisement on my talk show. It is called Fresno Vibes. We talk, we play awesome music. I also feature a bunch of different bartenders from different places. I like to have restaurants. I like to have any event, any kind of fun stuff. Contact me at rmgmissg@gmail.com and we will have so much fun and we will promote your business, promote your event right here on my show. So contact me. We'll have fun. Thank you.
In a world where Friday nights have become synonymous with going out to get wasted, consider not doing that, and instead save your money and tune in to the Hey Slingshot Show Friday nights at 7 p.m. Or go out anyway and pull out your phone and watch on Facebook or YouTube. You can even watch right now. It won't be live, but there is a significant backlog of shows that you can watch right now. Hey Slingshot, Friday nights at 7 on CentralValleyTalk.com.
Get your copy of Crouching Mama Hidden Veggies today, packed with recipes of delicious food cooked with hidden vegetables, so you can feel confident that you and your family are eating your veggies.
Contact Sprague Electric for all things electrical, solar installations, battery systems, troubleshooting, repairs, and more. Call 559-760-0712. SpragueElectric.com.
Hey, I'm Chris DeVold. Tune in every Friday night on CentralValleyTalk.com when I bring you Sex, Drugs, Chris DeVold, where I'll give you 3 guesses on what we talk about. And I also vow to bring you 1 live local music act a week. So tune in every week because you never know what kind of music you're going to hear right here on CentralValleyTalk.com.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Hey, welcome back to New Thought Talk. I'm your host, Reverend Steve Walling, and we're going through Pray and Prosper by Dr. Ernest Holmes. Moving forward, he says Jesus gave specific instructions for prayer, and then Holmes takes us through what we commonly refer to as the Lord's Prayer. I want to go through this because when we begin to look at it through the eyes of a New Thought, science of mind, religious science student, we begin to see the power that Jesus gave to potential individuals when they utilize this, and you understand his teachings. He says, starts off, he likened the divine spirit to a heavenly father, okay? And Jesus often referred to his heavenly father using the word Abba, which was basically kind of like saying daddy, if you will. And he often referred to the fact that the kingdom of heaven is to be found not outside but within ourselves. And so he opens this up. He says, our Father which art in heaven, in other words, God which lives within us, the God principle within us, the eternal truth within us, within me, as I seek to begin to have that spiritual communion, if you will. He says, hallowed be thy name. He says, thy name is perfect, okay? It is all-inclusive name. It is the I am. And we've talked about in the past the importance of understanding the truth of who we are often lies into our understanding of what it means when we say I am. He says, besides which there is none other. It is the one, only, and all, which includes everything that was, is, and is to be, the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Okay, thy kingdom come. Thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. And Holmes goes on to say, he says, when the kingdom of God is perceived and the will and the nature of God is understood, then shall the power within us will recreate and control our environment after the pattern of wholeness and abundance. Now that power within us is not our power. That's the divine power. You know, as we speak our word, we understand that with our word we give direction. The law responds, but that law is divine law. It's the principle itself that is responding to the word we speak at the level of our faith and belief. And you know, we keep going back to this at the level of our faith and belief, understanding that, you know, our faith and belief is limited by limiting thoughts that we hold, things that keep us separate, if you will, from our understanding of the truth of who we are as an integral part of the greater scheme of creation by the divine, expressing not only around us, not only through us, but as us. Okay? And so, he says, will and nature of God is understood, and then shall the power within us recreate and control the environment after the pattern of wholeness and abundance. When you look out into the world, if you look out in the world and you see limitation, you see lack, you see withoutness, okay? That's the will that you see. That's the direction you give to the law. When you refuse to look at what's going on in the world as being truth, and you know the greater truth of goodness, of abundance, of godness, if you will, then you have an intention, expectation to see that unfold in your life. He says, when that which is without shall be controlled by that which is within, when the kingdom of God comes on earth among men, it will heal all nations of sickness, war, poverty, for the kingdom of God is wholeness, unity, and peace. You know, I've said this many times, and I can say it many times more, that within each and every one of us, as we begin our spiritual journey to discover the truth of who we are, as we walk that journey, as we grow spiritually within ourselves, as we know a greater truth about ourselves, that we will not only be creating our life experience in a more harmonious, more love-filled, peace-filled, abundance-filled life experience, but we're also having an effect on the greater world itself. It's an amazing thing. We let chaos rule in the world because chaos has ruled in the world and nobody's bothered to check it. But it's not about checking it outside of ourselves. It's about checking the chaos which we have created within ourselves. He says, give us this day our daily bread. This is an acknowledgement that substance forever takes form in our affairs as manna from heaven. Substance readily available as we speak our word. You know, oftentimes people get confused when they're doing their prayer work, if you will. They're speaking their word, and they look out and they see the conditions, they see the effects in the world, and somehow they can't help tying their good to some evolution of the conditions and effects that they see in the world. But in truth, if we do that, what we're really doing is limiting the divine. We're limiting the law. We're limiting what can come, because God is not conditional. God doesn't see, Spirit doesn't see, principle is not tied to conditions. It can, out of its own self, in a new creative moment, create and demonstrate and manifest whatever is needed at that point in time. But we have to know it. We have to embody it. We have to believe it. We have to believe it with faith. Again, faith builds our strength and our belief. He says, give us this day our daily bread is an acknowledgement that substance forever takes form in our affairs. Okay? We got to get that. Give us this day our daily bread. This is meant to include everything that we shall ever need, want, or desire. Everything is available to us in potential already. Oftentimes, you know, Holmes has talked about that every day God pours an abundance, an infinite abundance over each and every one of us. But most of us only receive with like a thimbleful, sometimes not even that. We've got to learn to put that thimble down and to grab a cup. And if we can grab a cup and realize that we grabbed the cup and that the cup was filled, and we put the cup down and we grab a bigger cup or a glass, we put the glass down once we realize that, and we grab a bucket, and then a bucket, then a pail, and then beyond a pail and beyond that, until we open ourselves up to the greater infinite good of God, ever ready, ever present, and ever available to each and every one of us. He says, this includes, according to the words of Jesus, what things ever you desire. We must, however, be certain that the desire is consistent with the nature of reality, and that's with a capital R. And again, when we talk about consistent with the nature of reality, again, we're talking about being in alignment with principle. Yes, we can speak our word for experiencing greater good, greater abundance, financial abundance. We can get all excited. One of the greatest teachers of that is, and I go back to him, I think I even have his book, right here, The Health and Happiness and Prosperity for You by Reverend Ike. It's an incredible book, but we still have to, regardless of whether we're reading Reverend Ike, whether we're listening to the Fillmores, whether we're reading H. Emily Cady, whether we're reading Ernest or Fenwick Holmes, doesn't make any difference. We have to align ourselves with principle. We got to give up the limiting thoughts, and limiting thoughts are any kind of thought that puts separation between us and the divine principle itself. It expresses through us at our own level of limitation, if you will. So we got to move forward. He says, and this is where this comes into play as we begin to realize that. He says, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors, that we might, as Shakespeare says, there's the rub, Holmes is telling us, for it's a bold statement that mere protestations do not suffice. Again, we got to forgive, man. And, forgiveness, people they get their minds all wrapped up in the whole concept of forgiveness. There's great books that are written about forgiveness. Forgiveness is not about someone else. It's always about ourselves. And if you can open yourself up to believe as a babe, if you will, when you look out into the world, you look out in the world through eyes of love. Where and how difficult is to bring forgiveness into that concept, When Jesus said we love our neighbors as we love ourselves, that's it. We got, there's no exception. We got to go there. And if we have put something in our own minds as an impediment, as an obstacle to that, well, that's where our forgiveness work's got to go. It's got to start there, got to work there, and all that takes place within our hearts, within our minds, within our inner beingness. He says we must forgive if we are to be forgiven. We must love if we would be loved. God is love. God expresses as love, a love greater than, more abundant than, more, as my grandson says, more gooder than we can ever imagine. But we have to put ourselves there. It's like, imagine, if you will, that there's this, like Disneyland, they got these huge parking lots. It's just thousands and thousands of cars. But somewhere in that parking lot, there is a space, and that space was created and is held strictly and specifically for you. And every time we choose not to forgive, it's like we make a wrong turn in that parking lot. And so we got to drive around more. When there is a GPS right in our midst that will take us right to that spot. But we got to go there. And that's nothing that anybody else can do for us. He says we must not overlook another statement. He says, judge not, lest you be judged. We got that. And for with what measure we got that. With what measure you judge, boy, it's, and that's just it. But it's not it outside of you. It's still it within you. And that it within you can be changed only when you make the choice to change. Only when you choose to let go. As they used to say back in the day, let go and let God. Yeah, right there. It's not about telling other people how to make a better world for you. It's about how to make you for the better world, which will follow. He says, once we get there, he says, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Okay, so we've cleared the decks. We've gotten this idea of forgiveness. We're working through it, right? He says, lead us not into, don't go back there. Once you've cleared that out, don't, because you see chaos in the world, because you see the other versus yourself out there in the world, don't go there. And it takes practice, but it's practice that we can each participate in. Lead us not into temptation. There's no one that's got a chain to the ring in our nose but ourselves. And we can choose to let that go. And that does deliver us from evil. Because the only evil that exists in the world is the chaotic evil that humanity has brought into the world through their lack of understanding, lack of belief in the greater good that's God. And again, it's not, we can't go out and preach to the world to change. We do the change within ourselves. The world around us will change as a result. That's just the way it works. Might be tough for some of us, but that's just the way it is. Our inner GPS may say, I don't want to do that. I want to go somewhere else. It's time to reprogram that, to take us where we need to be to experience what we want to experience in our life. He says, for thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. The kingdom, the power, and the glory of reality never changes. They are always the same, ever available, unwavering, consistent. The glory of truth, the kingdom of reality, and the power of the law are ever with us. Man, life comes at us at the speed of life. we got a bigger God that is ever with us. At the level that we believe that we got a bigger God that's ever with us. Kind of puts the responsibility on our own shoulders. That's one of the things that oftentimes some people have, they take issue, if you will, being responsible. You know, when we talk about being responsible for our experience, and, you know, people will look out and say, well, you know, if you're responsible, then why have you created all this negativity in your life? Why aren't you demonstrating a greater good? Well, it's true we're responsible, but we are also, wherever we're at as individuals, there is a potential, an infinite potential that's available to us. Our journey is the discovery of that, the implementation of that in our life, and we'll do that at our own pace, our own inner ability to accept. And life will continue to give us lessons, if you will, that we can learn to accept greater good in our life. Or we come back again. So this is it. He says Jesus left very implicit instructions relative to prayer. It was one of the customs at the time for people to stand in the street corners and pray using a loud voice, petitioning God with vehemence, screaming their affirmations, proclaiming their denunciations, sometimes with wrath, sometimes with fear, sometimes with reverence. This rather boisterous and noisy approach to the Spirit did not disturb Jesus. He says with a calm sense that every man is rewarded according to his conscience. According to his own consciousness, disregarding what the particular method may be. What works for you. You know, if you need to go out in nature, if you can do it sitting in a chair, if you can sit on the subway, you know, on a bus, whatever works for you, because you're never alone. God is always with us. He says, "Verily I say unto you, they have their reward." And Holmes says, what a magnificent understanding, what depth of reason, what profound insight into reality. Jesus did not condemn, but in teaching his more intimate followers, those to whom he said it was given to know the mysteries of the kingdom. Jesus counseled another approach, calm, simple, direct, and of course, childlike. We must come as little children. And I didn't get as far as I thought today, but I think I covered a good deal. We'll pick this up next week. If you've got the book, I'm on page 16, about the middle of the page. We'll be moving forward and talking about praying and prospering. I hope you enjoyed today. I hope I gave you something to think about. But more importantly, I hope I gave you something that you can put into practice in your life for this week as you intend, as you have an expectation, and as you see demonstrations, manifestations. Thank you for being with me today. Mike has put up during the show our YouTube address, so you can always check us out there. We've got I think there's 170 plus videos for you to check in with. So as you go through the week, know that the light of God surrounds you, the love of God enfolds you, the power of God protects you, the presence of God watches over you. Truly, wherever you are, God is there. All is really well and beyond. Thank you for being with me. I'll see you this next week. Blessings and bye.